All right, hey there, guys. It's Metro, and we are back. Me and my main man, Cop, here, checking out another dungeon. This one, hotly requested, King's Rest. Obviously, one of the harder dungeons of the game. At one point, I would have said it's de facto the hardest. I don't really believe that anymore. It's been nerfed multiple times, if you guys aren't aware of that. Really been through probably about 3 to 4 major nerfs since the beginning of the expansion. So many of them were so long ago, you probably don't even remember them happening. But at this point, King's Rest is actually a pretty comfortable dungeon. The main problem, though, is getting under count. Really can't do that without a rogue. Can't do that at all on some weeks, depending on the emissary placements in Season 3. Of course, me and Cop are here looking at Season 4 potential, so things are going to change a lot with that fix. But today we're going to be talking about some of the scarier parts of this dungeon, and it is definitely one of the dungeons that requires the most wherewithal, from the guests. So good thing we're here with Cop. He's a genius. We're gonna crush it, right?
Yeah, I think I've been here once.
Okay. All right, so step one here is these minions of Zool. Very complicated mob type. Even though they look menacing, or they don't look very menacing, they can actually be the reason you succeed or fail the key pretty easily here. So we'll talk about these real quick, a little bit in depth here. They have 1 health, literally 1 health, okay? If you hit them for any point of damage, they will die. But you'll notice they have this massive shield on them, so you're not going to be able to kill them outright. Very difficult to do that. You could do it if you really wanted to, but nobody's going to actually fight them like that because they don't have a threat table. They fixate on a player, and really what you got to do is just get the shield off, and then they literally just get one shot by anything because they have 1 damage or 1 health. So the main thing here is if you're Horde, you want to use a Blood Elf. The best way to do it is go in there with Blood Elf. If you don't have a Blood Elf or you're not Horde, you're going to have to rely on things like Priest. Priest is definitely the best at it because Mass Dispel. They also have regular Dispel, so they basically can get... There's 7 mobs, I think. It's like it varies pack to pack here. But Mass Dispel can only hit, I believe, 5 targets. So either way, you're going to have at least 1 or 2 stragglers. Shaman can do it as well. Demon Hunter can do it. You could also kind of run in with an immunity. Rogue can do it. I've seen they'll go in, they'll get feared, and then they'll shroud. So, the things don't actually happen. But there's a variety of ways to deal with this. But the main thing you want to do is just deal with it. You don't want to have them cause any problems. If they get to you, they're going to fear you. And as you see, there's these 2 mobs to the right, which they got more than 1 health. Do you see that, Cop?
I see that. They got more than 1.
They have more than 1 health. So those mobs, you don't want to pull those. Let's put it that way. A lot more. That mob is just dead count. You really want to avoid fighting it. It's going to not be something you want at all. So ideally, this is what you would do. This is what I do. If we don't have somebody to go in, right? So it's easy to do if you have somebody to go in and clear them all, right? So this is what I like to do if you don't have somebody to go in. You want to kind of group them all together. You can do it with Gore Fiends like that and then throw D&D slow down. But you just want to get back here. You just want to get as far away from them as possible. Because if you're going to have to deal with them, you're going to want to not be feared into mobs. So, there's multiple ways you can do it. As you see, AMS works as well. Obviously, hit Cop, so, whatever. But ideally, you just will, if you're going to have to get fear, like there's a checklist that you got to go through mentally. Are we going to be able to clear them before they fear anyone? If the answer to that is no, regardless of how you handle it, then just pull them way back and make sure they don't fear you into one of these mobs here. Because if you do get feared into one of these guys, you've wasted a lot of time. Let's put it that way. But up here, you do have to fight one of these animated guardians. So this is going to be a lot more important that you do it well. Obviously, we're also doing this on Mythic. I should mention that before we get too far. Just because I noticed the last few recordings, a lot of the things didn't actually have the mechanics that we were talking about on the video. So I do want to at least show them. Hopefully it won't take too much longer to kill them on Mythic. But either way, we're fighting these guardians. They both do the same mechanic. They're both the same mob type. You're going to see it there, the suppression slam. It's going to be like this blue stuff on the ground. You're going to see it very easy to it's telegraphed very easily, so you should be able to move out of it. One tip is that if you have an ability like Death Grip or Ring of Peace, you can knock them back to prevent them from doing it. A lot of the times what I like to do, first of all, I'm pretty sure they'll always target their main threat target. So if that's you as the tank, you want to kind of face them both the same direction. One tip I will give is they don't both do it at the same time. The left one might do it first. So as you're waiting, the left one's doing it, wait the last possible second to turn. Because if you turn too quickly, like if the left one starts at 3-second cast, you move at 1 second, then the right one might hit it in the opposite direction, and then the DPS are going to have to go scattering. So that's just a little tip I'd give as the tank. But as DPS, easy as pie. Just make sure you're not stood in front of a. Don't get hit by that blue cone. It is actually got a maximum duration, as you might have seen there. There's like the blue lightning on the ground. It has an outward direction as well, not just a side-to-side direction. So if you're ranged, you can actually be so far away from those mobs that even if they're facing you and the stuff is in front of you, you still wouldn't get hit by it. Okay, so now we're in probably the most. This room is very dangerous, and it has a lot of controversy to it depending on the week. But the Shadowborn Witch Doctor is an incredibly high priority target. So you as a damage dealer, you're going to want to make sure that you're aware that this mechanic. Let's get this. Actually, it looks like we did. No, we're going to be good here. But anyway, you see these casts, Deathly Chill. That is surprisingly a very dangerous. Oh yeah, you did get feared. Oh, there you go. So there's some of the reasons that this dungeon can be difficult, as you see. You're getting feared into another pack. You don't want to let that happen. Honestly, I'm not sure how they split pulled. I've never seen that happen. But yeah, let's just try to wipe here because I want to talk about these mobs. But anyway, yeah, as you see, the minions of Zool are really a big pain here. Ideally, you'll have again a blood elf. I don't know, man. If you're not horde, I would just switch to horde, honestly. But if you have no blood elf in this group, probably just kick somebody and get a blood elf. This is so much easier when you have a blood elf. If not, no blood elf, you're gonna want a priest. If you have no priest, you're going to want a shaman. If you have no shaman, you're going to want a demon hunter. If you have none of those things, don't even think about timing this key. Complicated thing. But anyway, so yeah, hey, wipes happen all the time in there. So let's go and approach it from the other angle, because this trash is actually just as dangerous no matter which side you approach at first. But the main thing you want to keep in mind here is that Shadowborn Witch Doctor, or whatever, it's going to cast 2 abilities. It's going to do the Deathly cast. It's a frost damage cast. That is not, it doesn't look very dangerous, but it does a lot of damage. If you're a tank especially who cannot deal with magic well, it's going to do a lot of damage. And then it also is going to do this AoE Shadow Bolt thing, and that's the main one that you as a DPS, you have to kick that. If that thing gets off, you're going to wipe almost assuredly, unless it's like a really low key. That is just devastating. You cannot fight that thing. So again, we pretend we fought that last pack. We're going to have this pack now. I like to go, typically I would go that first pack that we pulled there. It looks like we actually killed the Witch Doctor in that pack. But then the champion is just as dangerous. It does this enrage ability. If you have a druid, you really want to soothe that. Okay, really good idea to bring a druid to this key as well, because soothing that champion is, especially on a high fortified, pretty much mandatory. You're getting hit like massive when he's enraged. He is pretty slow, but it's tough to actually slow him further or stun him or do anything really. So you can kite a little bit if you have speed, but it's not that easy to get away from him once he's enraged. Anyway, so yeah, we'll talk about this pack next. Same thing, really. It's just the Witch Doctor here. If you did wipe and you're now fighting him from this way, I will give you a little tip here. The best option here is to kind of fight them right at this little, right at the start of this hallway here. I'll show you why. These warrior mechanics, they're going to put down these tornadoes, okay? So you want to let them put the tornado down, and then you want to kind of move, see how the tornadoes come? So then you just move them out of it, and then that tornado is kind of stuck in an area that's unplayable. So there you go, there's Shadow Bolt Volley. We let the cast go off. Obviously it's a 0, so not going to kill anybody, but yeah, it's still, the big problem here with these mobs, actually this tornado. It does a lot of damage. As you see, it's called Gust Slash. Puts almost 9k every 2 seconds, and this is on 0, so you know what I mean? That should tell you a little bit, but this room is definitely not ideal, because the tornadoes are going to get complicated. Basically, like I was saying, you would just kind of try to keep them in these little areas that you couldn't possibly get hit by them, and then drag them back. But all right, so anyway, let's go back to the way we would have started. But again, this champion, you might see it here as we fight him. He's going to do the enrage. Definitely the hardest mob type in here for sure. It's the most obvious mob, so a lot of people are, they're aware of it. And then what ends up happening is the other mobs kind of sneak up on you. So they have vigilant defense as well. You just want to make sure you're not hitting him. As you see, he cannot be attacked. It says deflect. You don't want to get deflected. Would you agree?
I would agree. We don't want to get deflected.
No, you don't want to get deflected.
Can you attack him from the back when he's got that up, or?
Yeah. That's what you want to do. You want to attack from behind. So the champion dude, when he puts that shield up, you want to just swoo right around behind him, and punch, and he's gonna fall. But as long as you got a druid dispelling that, it's not gonna be that big of a deal. Okay, so we got 2 warriors here. This is definitely, this pack sometimes with teaming, it has another caster in it. But this is like, your second pull. Typically, you would have got the pack to the right that we killed, kind of by accident when we got feared into the mobs. You would start with that pack. Then you would do the little dudes, the minions of Duel. You would hopefully clear them out with a, one of the classes that we talked about, one of the options we talked about. The main thing that I want to bring up about those, I want to gloss over this though, is that if it's busting or bolstering, you got to be real careful. I'm talking about real careful. You know what I mean? Like, because if you hit all of those with the Master Spell or Blood Oath ratio, and you got bolstering, that mob is now taller than Cop. I mean, Cop's a big guy, but this thing's big, right? It's big. He's real big. Yeah, so that'd be like 5+ stacks immediately, and then the same thing with busting. If you clear, 5 to 7 of those mobs in a row, a lot of people do it. They'll bring a Resto Shaman. The guy will purge them kind of in quick succession, and then drop Spirit Link. Spirit Link, pretty much a catch-all. But yeah, anyway. Okay, so we clear here. I'm gonna put marks just so we're on the same page here. You're gonna clear Skull, then you're gonna clear red, which would be the minions Azul. Then you're gonna clear green, then you're gonna clear blue. Okay, that's the order I would have went in. All right, so kill red. Sometimes if it's a really easy trash week, I might combine red and green together, and then you get red. Or I'm sorry, you might combine Skull and green together, and then you get red, which is the minions Azul, and then you go on blue. Now at this point, this is where things get really squirrely. Right now, there's a really dangerous combination where these mobs can be with a bad emissary. You can actually split pull those by standing right here on these stairs and just taunting or doing any type of damage, whatever, single target to the Shadowborn Warrior that I just marked with the skull there. If you taunt or whatever, he will come and the emissary won't aggro. But, again, talking about Season 4, we're more worried about that. So either way, you should realize that the Witch Doctor is going to be your priority here. You want to get this thing down ASAP, because if they do get too many casts off, the tank's going to die. That's the frost damage one. And if they get even a single Shadow Bolt volley off, you're all going to die. And people are probably going to leave because this is really a volatile room, man. It's stressful. So you kill those, and then again the warriors are going to put out the little tornadoes, so the whole time you got to be dodging them, especially as a melee DPS. You really don't want to be getting hit by those tornadoes. And then by the time you kill, you see the champion, he doesn't actually have that much more health than the other mobs, but he's got that shield. A lot of the times you're going to be accidentally doing 0 damage to him, so usually by the time you kill the other 3, the champion will be the last mob and you can just finish them. But again, any type of dispelling, you're going to want to be really careful. So let's see how this plays out here. So definitely chill. See, I'm taking, it's actually Shadow Frost damage, but I'm taking a fair amount of damage even for a normal. And there's the Gust Slash, you see the tornado, so you kind of just want to gradually move them. Want to make sure that any interrupts. So there's Shadow Bolt volley. You want to make sure that's interrupted so I can grip it, stun it, knock it back, anything like that. But definitely you got to make sure you're interrupting that. So if you're a DPS in here and you're going to interrupt one mechanic, the tank could interrupt the cast, the other cast, the Shadow Frost damage cast, because that's easy enough, right? That's kind of their job. You as the DPS, you don't really care if the tank's getting hit that hard, obviously. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily your problem, even though it'd be nice to help. You can just let the tank handle that. You'll either interrupt it, knock it back, use CDs to survive it, no big deal. But you definitely got to interrupt the shadow mechanic. If you don't, your whole room's going to die. So that's the #1 priority in this whole room for sure. Now, I like to try to pull those over here because I want to get a clean start on this boss. The boss is going to aggro about 10 seconds after you kill that last mob, maybe more like 15, but it's going to be a few seconds. So once he gets around back, once he gets behind the thing there, I usually do a countdown, wait about 2 seconds, and then we pull. But don't kill him too fast. I want to show you a couple things here, because this is definitely the most, this has the potential to be the most dangerous boss in here. It's really only going to do one mechanic, and it's that one right there, Spit Gold. This thing does a lot of damage to the damage dealers, okay? And you'll see Cop actually taking a lot of damage, even on 0. So what he's doing right now is the complete opposite of what you want to do. What you want to do is you want to try to keep it up here. You want to basically puddle them all in a kind of like a little box here. I would say kind of between red, skull, and then, blue and whatever other color we eventually put down, green. Over here, okay. Obviously, you don't have the boss up here. I'm just showing you how it might look. But there's the Jonathan Lucre's call. It's going to spawn ads. You want to kill them as fast as possible. If those ads get to the boss, you're done. You're done now. It's going to heal him. It's going to put a giant shield on him. It doesn't actually kill him, but it's going to put a giant shield on. But the #1 mistake here is the mistake that we just made. Don't make it. Do not drop them in 2 different areas. If you drop them in 2 different areas, you're in serious trouble. it's going to make it a lot more complicated, you know, and this is obviously more complicated because we got one on the tank, so not ideal. Obviously not going to happen when you're doing this with the real dude. It'll never go on the tank, but I guess only one can be out at a time, so as you see, it just keeps going on us. So yeah, I mean, we might actually legit not even do this right now just because of that, but if they do get to the shield, if they do get to the boss, they're going to put the shield out, and obviously you got to move out of the big wind circle mechanic as well. But yeah, so this is a great example here. This is hell. Like, we're done. We're gonna wipe here because, I mean, we're not probably gonna wipe just because it doesn't matter on 0. But if this happened on Mythic Plus, it's over. I mean, it is actually gonna be over. Anyway, so yeah, there you go. Great example. You've got to make sure all the puddles are on one side because otherwise they're not gonna die fast enough. Or more so, they're gonna be so spread out that you can't actually you can't kill them in a timely fashion. So. Yeah, let's wipe. I guess we'll try it again. We'll show you guys what's up. But yeah, so that's the biggest thing on this boss. The spit gold mechanic itself is actually extremely dangerous. Like, if you're doing it on a low key, you might not even realize. But yeah, you got to be aware because if not, you're probably going to just straight up die to it. Like, if the healer doesn't... Basically, this is probably the hardest healing fight. It's one of the hardest healing fights in the game in terms of keystone difficulty because the higher key, the harder that mechanic gets, obviously on Tyrannical. So... if you accidentally, yeah, if somebody dies there, that's that, you know what I mean? That's a very easy way to wipe, very easy way to lose your key is not be ready for that. So yeah, let's just, kill us as quick as possible this time so we don't have those ads spawning. But yeah, so that's the goal. Just kill them. This is a great boss for, obviously you're gonna lust here, you're gonna pop everything, but this is a great boss to really do good single target because if you do really, this is a fight that you do, the better damage you do, the less ads there's gonna be. So it's gonna be really nice to yeah, just bring your A game here. It is tough on Tyrannical though. Spit gold is a real dangerous thing, and especially as the damage dealer, if you're not very sturdy, you'll probably want to use big defensives. If you get it, it's obviously not going to go on the same person every time, but if you get it, you're going to need to make sure that you are ready to kill it, or ready to not die to it more so. But yeah, so you want to stack them up like this. Again, not ideal since I'm getting it, but it doesn't matter as long as Top puts it there with the alternate, it's still fine. To make sure that the ads that spawn from them are all in the same spot, so when they come out we could easily funnel AoE onto them or stun them, or you could even root them. I've seen a lot of people do things like the druid roots, stuff like that. The other mechanic that you should be aware of is that big blue circle on the boss. If that there serpentine gust, we're gonna kill these ads. Gonna actually do magic damage, so if you AMS, you could survive pretty easily. But otherwise, yeah, that's that. Just kill boss, I guess. There you go. Actually, harder than 0 is gonna be interesting, but all right. So that boss, as much difficult as we have here, expect to have even more difficulty when you're doing it in Mythic Plus, because if people don't know what they're doing, it's gonna be a really crazy fight.
You can't stand against.
All right. So a famous room. One of these 4 are going to spawn every time. You got about 15, maybe 10 seconds in between. This one's a really tough one here. The Shadow Bolt, Queen Wazi, you want to interrupt that every time. And then King Tamalji, or however you say this dude's name, he does a whirlwind. You want to make sure you run out. The second you see the whirlwind cast, you want to make sure that you get out as a melee right there. Blade Storm does a ton of damage. Picks a target, kind of focuses on them. Actually cops them in mind controls. He's no longer my friend. This chick is going to mind control people. You can actually you can purge it. So if it targets somebody and you have a purge, which again you should have if you're coming into this dungeon, Blood Oath Racial, Demon Hunter, Demon Hunter, Priest, Shaman, you can purge it and it will go away. Otherwise, it's just damp. Get out eventually. These 2 guys are probably the easiest out of the 4 for sure. You dodge that Blade Storm and the other one. See what we got next here. A lot of times you're praying for one over the other because CDs and stuff, but you gotta use CDs twice in this room for sure. So this one's probably the hardest tank one, but it's definitely the easiest DPS one. Basically don't do anything. The hunting raptor is going to do a fair amount of damage, but it's like pretty much 100% avoidable. It's also this purple mechanic. Ideally you won't drop that on the mob, but it's not really doing any more as long as you've got a couple range. The mob is not that quick. Typically the queen one is going to be the one that's up last, but either way, the raptor can be gripped, nothing special. He just does this frontal cleave type raptor ability. It's the same that's going to be on the other raptors in the dungeon, so learn it now, I guess. This one's pretty straightforward too. You just big AoE here. Ideally, you'll have every CD up and you just go bonkers, kill them that quick. The rest of the mobs can be stunned and stuff, as you see. Grip them, play AoE them, you know, whatever you got, Gorfine, something like that. Oh yeah, that poison mechanic that gets put out, if it ticks even a single time, it will drop a poison puddle on the ground. So big tip here, if you're playing a class that can dispel poison, sit on your dispels and make sure you get it, because as you see, the whole room is filling up. You really want to avoid that. And if you dispel it immediately, if you dispel it without a single tick going off, no poison will be on the ground. But if you let even a single tick go off, then you're going to be moving all around the room. And this could be actually a real pain when you have this King Akua, whatever, you have the left one and the Raptor one up, because then there's stuff from 2 different mobs on the ground, and it can be very difficult, especially if you got like Sanguine. This one's pretty straightforward. The King here is actually going to be a big mechanic that you really need to try to prevent. Axe Barrage, the guard captain, is actually going to be dangerous, but it's not something that you really need to worry about. It's more on the healers. But you see this Channel Lightning, you can grip it to stop it, or you can simply move out of it. And so basically as a DK, I wait to grip that, and then I do Seneschal Mumbara can be interrupted. She'll do a heal or whatever. I don't know. You could kill, you could use an interrupt, you could stun, you could grip that as well. These guys can be gripped, but you want to make sure that you're gripping the King, because if you let that lightning channel go off, all the melee are going to have to run away. So, you know, you as a melee cop, you're going to have to run from that. You could also ring it, so it's actually really good. If you fight him right against the wall here, and you put like ring, like right where my D&D would be, it would kind of pin them up against the wall, and then they'd be like, yeah, they'd be trying to do things, but they're pinned up against the wall, so they can't do nothing. That's actually a really good play, but obviously you can only do that the one time. Big tip though, you want to make sure you wait until after they started doing it. Like if you notice when I gripped it, I didn't grip it immediately, because there's that upward channel and then there's the actual cast of it, or it's the other way around. There's the cast and then there's the channel. If you grip the cast, he's just going to try casting it again. But once he started the cast, once he started the channel, then you can grip it and he won't be able to do it again for a while. Gotcha. Okay. So now this is a mob that a lot of people try to skip. I'm not really sure what it's going to look like in season 10 or whatever is coming up, but this is a mob that you really don't need. Again, these mobs are just they're just dead count. They have so much health, but if you do need to fight it, which you know a lot of times you're going to fight it, what you want to do is you want to keep it against the corner here as a tank, because it's going to put these fire puddles down. And then you want to kind of, you know, just keep them together so the DPS has plenty of opening. The big thing here is it's going to do this fire beam, as you see. This beam does a pretty nasty dot, so what you want to do is try to avoid it. And you kind of want to put the boss in a position. It's always going to come from his right hand, you see? So you kind of want to put the boss in a position where the DPS won't get hit immediately, or perhaps they could even avoid 100% of it. Frankly, I'm not very good at that because I'm a little selfish at times, and I want to make sure I don't get hit by it. But you cop as a DPS, you want to just try to make sure you don't get hit by it. It's always going to be on the tank. It's always going to start the way he's facing, right? So as long as the tank isn't turning the mob on top of you as he's doing it, you should always have at least 2 or 3 seconds to react, get out of that. But it does, you know. You might not realize it, but
I'm standing directly to behind him to his left side. I should have enough time to move.
Yeah,
it's coming out of his right hand.
A couple seconds for sure. But the dot that it puts on, it's like legit. It's pretty dangerous, and it could be refreshed too. So if you got hit by it immediately and then ran back through it, the dot would refresh and you'd have even longer. Okay, so let's talk about this room. Commonly, you know, a lot of people look at this room as one of the easiest, you know, stretches of trash in any dungeon at all, and I can totally understand why. These mobs effectively do nothing on many affixes, and some affixes they're very, very complicated. Again, with bolstering, sanguine, stuff like that, or busting, they can be dangerous as well. But you basically just have a free pass to AoE here, and it's probably not going to change in season 4. Sometimes there's an emissary in the middle. One thing with teaming, that mob that we just fought, the fire dude, there's actually one of those kind of padding around in this room. So it can actually be a real pain on teaming, but it's only 2 or 3 weeks out of the year, so it's not a big deal. Just be aware here, you know, you're going to bring your big AoE here. You really want to try to kill these as fast as possible. What I like to do is go about like this big here. Maybe grab that one as well. Basically cut the room in half, and then you can kind of get a nice even kite here. You really got to make sure you're dodging this green stuff. It puts a stacking poison on you that it can be dispelled. It can also be freedomed. So if you have anything that clears movement impairing effects, it will work on this. It's technically a slow, even though it's a poison. But yeah, ideally, you know, if you have a, see, I already got 2 stacks, so movement speed reduced by 20%. So that's pretty. Well, anyway, I've messed it up, but yeah, I believe things like Wraith Walk might work. I almost never take Wraith Walk with 5-man. I bet whatever Tiger's Lust or whatever, that might work too. But as yeah, 9 stacks. I mean, you're getting your ass kicked. You're probably gonna die there. Whew. Oh, we aggro more stuff. But anyway, yeah. So that's you kind of want to do half the room. What I like to do is half the room, and then this internment construct. We'll talk about him in a second here. But this yeah, half the room. Basically, use your CDs on all that. Then come over here and fight this guy. You know, your CDs will be recharging. And then yeah, like so. What you just did there, you really want to avoid doing that. Just running through it puts a stack up, and it's something that either somebody's gonna have to dispel or you're gonna have to deal with. So, okay, so this mob is actually really interesting. I feel like it's got a bit of a bugged mechanic. He's gonna try to put one of us in these sarcophaguses, and for some reason he always picks the closest one or something. I'm not exactly sure why, but in Tomb, there you go. It's gonna be on cop. Watch this. I'm gonna spam it. Literally before anything even happens, he's out. He always picks this one, and I think it's just the closest one to him. So as long as you're fighting him next to this one, you can just spam it when he casts the ability, and the dude is literally gonna not even do them.
Wow.
And, you know, they can also be gripped. Watch it. This is so funny looking. Watch this. How funny this is. Look at that. How silly that looks, gripping that big dude through the air. But it's pretty cool. Not that you'd ever really want to, but you can. Now, a lot of people are going to get really, because again, everybody's like, oh, this is the easiest trash in the whole game. And I understand that, but it's still a little complicated. So what I like to do is just go 3 and 3 here. Well, it would have been more than that because we did pull 1 extra. But one thing to notice here is they don't proximity aggro. So you see, I aggroed 2 out of the 3 there, but that final one didn't come. Kind of a pain. As a DPS, you might want to realize that. If you can help get them, you should. Otherwise, just realize that the tank might be bothered by getting them all before he can actually get aggro on them. So a lot of the times I'll lose threat here just because I'm kind of gathering them all. The DPS are doing like 150k and there's all these 8 mobs or whatever. But yeah, so this is kind of just the kite you want to play. You want to just kind of drag them backwards. Nothing crazy. Just make sure you don't get too close to Machimba, who definitely will aggro. Basically, if you go up on the stage, he'll aggro. Might be like right close to the stage, he'll aggro. But anyway, let's talk about this real quick because a lot of people get overzealous. They'll pull that with this dude, okay, the interment construct. I would not recommend this because what's going to happen there is they're going to kill the blobs, right? And then there's going to be a patch of green on top of the sarcophagus. And that means you're going to have to move the dude, right, to attack him without getting killed by the poison. And that means you're not going to be able to free the player. So even though it's like, oh, it's such an easy trash room, just pull the entire room, it's fine. You still got to do some of the mechanics. Like, unless you're doing like a 7 or something like that, nothing's going to die fast enough that you don't, you know, you're just going to be able to ignore the mechanics, right? So if you, you know, as a monk, you could even try to ring. Like, you could try to maybe, if somebody does that, what you could try to do is kind of like just keep the interment construct away from the poison mobs. If I do end up in a situation where we've aggroed this whole room, I like to kind of just kite the green guys around and not really worry about the construct. Just kind of let him sit there, maybe even hit somebody that's not me, so he's not following me around the whole time. You could stun him, blah, blah, blah. But you just want to kind of keep him there. So when somebody gets in the coffin, you just quickly get it out and, you know, whatever else happens. But ideally, you won't have idiots who think you should pull like 12 mobs at once. There you go, nice ring. But yeah, you'll see, you see the same thing here. I don't really know. It just, here, let's actually see if we can get it to work on this one now. It just, I don't know if it's bugged or not. Like, I guess this is how it's supposed to go. But it seems to just always pick the closest one, right? Yeah, it just always picks the closest one, whichever one you're closest to. So just make sure you fight him next to one. I mean, there's no reason that you would ever fight him like over here or something. I don't know what would happen if you were in the dead center of the room. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I guess we might be able to find out. It's probably just gonna die before.
I'm just gonna stop doing abilities now.
Minute. Yeah, he only does it like once every minute, so I've never seen him do it twice, not the trash. But anyway, it's the same mechanic as the actual boss. It's basically, you know, the trash always kind of teaches you the boss. So this is kind of the same deal here. That that mechanic is going to happen on the boss, and it's a lot more complicated. So let's talk about that. So it could be one of any 4 of these you can get put in. It has nothing. There's no cheesy way to do it on the actual boss. And when you're in there, you get an extra action button or something like that. It makes them shake. When you press it, it makes the coffin shake. So then the people who aren't you have to look at which one's shaking and have to go really fast, sprint over there and get you out. If you don't do it quick enough, he's gonna be channeling on a different one while somebody's in there. Okay, basically while somebody's in there, he has this mechanic that's happening. The longer you're in there, the more likely that he'll finish this channel on another coffin. And when he does, a mob comes out. Let's actually see that happen. We might end up wiping here because let's see that happen. I want to show that off. Long story short, this boss is extremely easy, but it can actually be very dangerous because if people don't get the person out of the coffin, or they open the wrong coffin, which probably is the thing that I see happen the most and just makes me absolutely laugh. Like, I can't help but laugh hysterically when it happens. If somebody opens the wrong coffin, they might also have the same problem. That drain fluids mechanic, by the way, it happens. Just whatever. Use a defensive. Healer's just gonna have to heal you, not a lot. Okay, so let's see. Entomb. So let's see what happens. So you're on the far left one. I see you over there. He's going to this far right one. See it there, open coffin. I'm gonna come get you out. But as you see, he's gonna finish this open coffin mechanic, and when he does, he's gonna spawn a little spooky, scary skeleton, a half-finished mummy. As you see, he's gonna put a disease on us that does 32,000 damage every 2 seconds. Now that can be interrupted. You can stun the mob. You can kill it. You can do anything to it. I mean, maybe you can do a mind control. Now you can't mind control, but obviously if you make this mistake, realize you have made an absolutely grievous mistake and you need to rectify it immediately. You need to stop this freaking mummy from trouble here. This is another big problem here, is this fire is extremely dangerous. You can just run through it on 0, but you're never going to get away with that on actual Mythic Plus. This fire is actually low-key extremely dangerous because if you're boxed in like we were there, you're in serious trouble. So it's happening because there's only 2 of us, so it's constantly just putting it on top of us. But ideally, you know, the people will kind of be spread out here. Where you at?
I'm on the far right.
Okay. Yeah, so luckily you won't be doing it as a blood DK if you're ever asked. Hopefully you have a demon hunter or a rogue or a monk or somebody with a lot of speed to get it. But as you see, I got it just at the last second there, and I also interrupted. Stun that mob, whatever, you prevent it from casting the ability. If you fail to break the person out before the channel, and you've got to make sure that you do not let that cast go off. That cast will absolutely wipe you. And again, it can happen when you open the wrong one. It can happen when you don't get the person out fast enough, or you might accidentally get 2 out too, right? So you definitely gotta be ready. I don't know. I can't say this enough. This has the potential to be the easiest boss in the game. Really, it probably is the easiest boss in the game. It's up there. There's a couple that are really easy, and this one's one of them. But the fire, if you're fighting him for a really long time, the fire is really gonna pinch the room off. And I'm telling you, man, I won't lie about it, dude. It's the funniest mistake I've ever seen. When some idiot comes and opens the wrong sarcophagus. Dude, oh my god, dude, we laugh so hard when it happens on stream because it is just, this actually happened once. This demon hunter like fell rushed or whatever, got over here and clicked both of them over here, and neither of them were the one. So we just had 2. We just had 2 of those ads, and it's just over. You can't stop both of them, right? So, oh man,
that would be hilarious.
But it's 32,000 on normal. So think about what it would be on like a 20, you know? So
oh my god.
Can't have that. That can't happen. All right, so here's probably the hardest stretch of trash in the entire game. Probably the hardest stretch of trash in the game. Luckily, we all play Blood DK, right? So this is actually probably the time that Blood DK is going to truly shine. If there was a dungeon where I would say Blood DK might feel mandatory, this is the one, because you could mind control and keep as a pet the hardest of every mob type in here, and that is going to be, can't remember the exact name, but we'll see very shortly. It does this bleed, and it is freaking bonkers. There it is there, Spectral Berserker. So right now there's some complications with the emissaries, there's some complications with that patrol. You'll see kind of walking up there. We'll talk about him a bit here, but season 4, not going to be any emissaries. Come play Blood DK. Mind control, use control and dead on these guys. and then interrupt them, get them together, kill these two. That's it. Hex Priest, just interrupt it. They're gonna, I think these guys put the totem down. I don't even know. That's probably the Witch Doctor. It doesn't matter. Just the rest of the mobs are so easy compared to that main dude, that Berserker dude, that it doesn't even matter what they do. Don't worry about it. As long as you could do this, then you're gonna be in good shape. Odds are you're not going to be able to do this. So let's talk about it. The big problem here is that it could hit anybody. It's not just the tank. All right. Hey, don't kill him too fast. Let's see what happens. He can hit anybody. He's going to hit the closest target. It could be a good thing. There it is, Severing Blades. Puts a huge bleed, 23k, almost, you know, comparable to what we were talking about in that last boss, right? So a big bleed, and it can stack. So there's going to be up ahead. You're going to fight two of them. Sometimes they'll just hit it so fast that you might stack a single mob might stack multiple on you. Very, very, very dangerous. But it can hit pets. It can hit damage dealers. So if you're really worried about it as a tank, you can put a little distance between yourself. You could stun it, kind of just disrupt it. Like, yeah, see, he actually stacked up 2 on me. So,
wow.
If, you know, I wasn't just sitting here talking. What I would be doing is trying to stun him. Once I get one, stun him, so he can't do another one within the duration of the first one. You know what I mean? You're just trying to alleviate the pressure of having 2 stacks. That's GG. So, you know, as a DPS, you don't really have to anything to do. If the tank is kiting, though, you know, you're playing a melee, just try to watch and make sure you don't get hit by it. It might happen, you know, depending on where the tank actually is. But if the tank's really far away, that mob doesn't care. It's going to put it on somebody else. He's going to put it on somebody else. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you get hit by that bleed and you're not a tank, oh, you probably get ready for a res. Okay.
Yeah. Night.
Now, yeah. The Witch Doctor's in here. I'm going to actually mind control this guy, and we'll talk about the Witch Doctor. Don't kill. These Witch Doctors are actually relatively dangerous, too. Not anywhere close to that kind of danger. But they do a couple mechanics. The rest of the trash in here does a couple mechanics that you're going to want to be aware of. And this is it here. This Frost Shock. It doesn't do a lot of damage. It does a fair amount of damage, but what it really does, and there's also the Healing Tide Totem, which, by the way, you have to actually target in case people are new. Any totem, anything that's classified as a totem in World of Warcraft cannot be AU down. There's actually totems on the boss coming up. Same deal. You have to physically attack them with a single target ability, kind of just like how explosive fix. But anyway, let's talk about that Frost Shock, because it's actually more important than you realize. That Frost Shock is going to be a 50% slow. Not really a big deal, right? Well, if you're fighting this brute, which we're about to fight, you cannot afford it. If you get slowed while fighting this brute, you're not going to be able to get out of the mechanic unless, you know, you're a monk or something that dash out. You're not going to be able to get out of the mechanic. So you really want to be careful with that. It can be dispelled. It's a magic effect. So let's talk about the brute now. This is actually the perfect time to pull him as well. Typically, I would have killed my pet first. He can be gripped, as you see, but this is the mechanic he does. Ground Crush, I'll get hit by it. Cop won't. Perfect. You're going to get knocked up in the air, and you're going to fall. So you're going to take a bunch of damage getting knocked up in the air, and then you're going to take fall damage too. Now, this area here getting knocked up, you hit your head on the ceiling pretty hard. It's not a big deal. But in this next little area here, the ceiling is much higher. It's actually, there's an achievement up here. You use this mob to get that achievement. But long story short, just get out of the mechanic. It can't be that difficult. If you're having trouble, try to face your camera so you don't have to turn. Like, any wasted movement is going to be oftentimes not enough time. So as a DK tank, you're especially slow. What I like to do, well, basically the biggest mistake I make is say, like, okay, let's say the mob is yellow marker. Okay, I'm facing him here. Biggest mistake people will make is they'll run through him to get out of it. I see people do this all the time. I'm never why. Like, that's an extra 2 or 3 yards that you're gonna run. You're not gonna get out if you just. Another mistake I'll make is, you know, again, mob is yellow. I'm here. If I'll do this, I'll be like, oh, turn around, and I'll kind of take, like, I don't like snap my character. I kind of meander. You know what I mean? Like, kind of turn a little bit.
Gotcha.
You gotta get out. You gotta get out. But I'm telling this to a monk. The dude's like, lol, let's keep moving, man. I don't care about this. You can just roll.
It's good. It's good to know.
No, but for real, I mean, just, and again, the Frost Shock. So you're oftentimes, you're going to fight that together. That's why I'm bringing that up. We had it work out perfectly where that wasn't a problem in this run here. But, oh, another thing you can do with this mob is you can grip that. You don't, because oftentimes that Berserker is going to charge, like, all the way back there by the D&D. When he does that, that's a DPS loss, right? Don't let him do that. Grip him. You know, easy mode. Put ring down. stop them from jumping. You could put Ursul's Vortex down, stop them from jumping. You can knock them back midair, shaman, etc. A lot of ways, stun them, whatever you got. But anyway, that's pretty much it. So now we got these raptors. Same thing as the raptor from the little mini boss area before. They're gonna jump. They're gonna do this frontal cleave, kind of like the Toronto's Raptor basketball team. And then that's it. You're just gonna kill them. Just dodge them. They could be stunned. Again, the Beastmaster, can be mind controlled. I like this target a lot. It's gonna do a lot of freaking damage. So let me go ahead and get this as mind control. We just kill these two, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what this mob does. Yeah, so there's Hunting Leap, as you see. It's going to do this frontal slash. It does a lot of damage. You really got to be careful. It's oftentimes going to jump right behind you, and if you're in front of it, it's going to... this is another one that's like, oh man, this is like the common thing you hear in this room. Oh my god, I wasn't anywhere near the front of him. You know what I mean? It's bigger than it looks. You know what I'm saying? Like, the animation is a little small, so... You as a melee DPS cop, you really got to be aware of that, because it's going to try to jump behind you. It doesn't just jump into random spots. It's always going to try to jump behind a target and then kind of maul, like kind of slash, so
I wonder if I could ring a piece when it lands behind me, ring a piece it away far enough to not get hit.
Yeah, just any disruption is a safe play. It's one of those things that it's like you don't really need it, like just move, right? Just move. It's not hard, but it's still a good idea to stun them, grip them, knock them back, disrupt them, anything like that, just to prevent them from doing it, because it might kind of just sneak up on somebody. Okay, so let's talk about this Beastmaster, because this is an interesting mob type. Again, this is actually the best one to mind control, because it's got this poison barrage. It does a ton of AoE damage, especially if you can get it to stack a couple times. But it's going to basically do three mechanics. It's going to do this, don't kill you. It's going to do this auto attack, and then it's going to do this. This Deadeye shot, it's going to knock you back. Well, guess what? I have had it in this poison barrage, so that's going to be unavoidable. Let's talk about that first. The poison barrage is unavoidable. It's going to target a person, and it's going to put this nasty poison up on them. Would you cleanse it?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
It was killing me.
Yeah, it's going to put that it's on you again. Let's see how much it does. But as you see, it's going to track him, and no matter what... Wait, what'd you do?
Well,
I don't know. Either way, it's going to pick somebody, and it's going to deal a ton of damage over time. So basically what you want to do, here, let's say this. We have the mob, and it's here at Skull. Okay? And you want to have the poison over faced by green, and then you want to have everybody else kind of over here. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's ideally what you would do. You're not going to stop it. Like, it's going to get off at some point in your keys. You might kill it so fast that it doesn't do it, or you might just chain stun it, knock it back, root it, blah, 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 whatever to stop it. But eventually it's going to get off, and you shouldn't fear it. It's not that dangerous, especially if you have a poison dispel, but it is dangerous if it hits everybody. That's the big mistake. When you get 5 people hit with it, that's really, really, really a big problem. But what I did want to talk about with this mob, and something that actually let's keep moving here, and I'll show it on the next pack actually, because they're one of those. So again, another pretty dangerous pack. It's got a witch doctor, it's got the berserker, and it's got a caster here. So the hex priest, again, we should have mentioned it before. They're going to do a hex. Who would have thought with the name like hex priest? But they're going to do a hex. And you really want to make sure that's interrupted, because obviously you have to dispel it. But it's not that big of a deal if you do. Kill the totems. Any single target damage will kill it. Try to prevent the berserker from hitting more. I think that the berserker killed yours win, dude. He put the bleed on your cat, bro. What the hell, man? How funny is that? But
nice.
Yeah, so Frost Shock, it's gonna make it harder to move. Again, you can clear it with the regular dispel, or you can just move. No big deal. But okay, so here's I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna mind control the Beastmaster just to isolate it. We'll kill the pack. Again, nothing crazy here. Hex Priest, interrupt, Raptor, prevent it from killing you with its frontal cone ability. Not a big deal. Careful. Hex, watch the cop's about to get hexed. Look at that. Here, go ahead and rib it, cop.
Ribbit.
See, he's hexed, right? I didn't even tell him to do that. That's
Ribbit.
There we go. So anyway, you see, my mind control mob puts that poison barrage on the target, doing 24k. Look how much damage this is. Well, it's not a ton yet. It's gonna stack up. It's gonna really get up. If you fought these mobs for a really long time, it would be your #1 damage to these mobs. It's really nuts. And it's also shooting. It's also using shoot. Okay. But oh yeah. So one thing, if you do mind control it, you want to use it's C5, control 5. It's the 5th ability here. You want to right click this, because you don't want it knocking these dogs or whatever. You don't want these knocking these raptors back. You don't want that. You want a mob all to stay together, okay? Now, watch what happens here. I'm going to show you guys. I made this mistake on stream on this Wednesday. Don't make this mistake, all right? Don't kill this mob.
Okay.
Don't make the mistake that I'm going to show you how not to make here, okay? Again, you're going to have to fight this Beastmaster here, especially you're mind controlling. Watch this mistake. Don't do that. Don't get knocked back into the other pack. I did that the other day. It didn't go well. Let's put it that way.
I'll come save you.
Die. No, kill it. Or don't kill it. I want to go after it. But anyway, yeah, that's very dangerous pack. So we'll talk about that in a second here. But yeah, just go and die, dude. Just jump off.
Jump off. You can jump off.
But anyway, yeah. Whoop. Yeah, you can fall off here. That's another thing. You might get knocked off the platform if the Deadeye shot knocks you off. You might actually get knocked off the platform. So. Yeah, anyway, okay, so let's talk about that pack, because that's definitely the hardest pack in here, so I want to get a full look at it. It's very dangerous, and a lot of times you're going to skip it with a rogue. A lot of the times this is where you really want to have a rogue. If not, you could invis pop past it. Oh, another good tip here, I'm glad we actually died here. A lot of people, this mob here, you see that guy there, the blue? You could use him to skip part of the dungeon. Did you know that?
Yes, I remember that
Okay,
the one time I did it.
Yeah, so you just got to stay to the left side of this little rock. Like, you see this rock thing right here in my D&D? It's like this rock kind of like protrusion here to designate flooring. Just stay to the left of it. You'll still be able to talk to the guy, but you won't aggro that animated guardian. If you're on it or to the right of it, you will aggro the animated guardian. So, pro tip there, just stay to the left of that little rock area there. Yeah, you can still come. Now, one thing... If you did skip the mob that was here, you remember where we are? If you did skip the mob that was here, that mob that teleports you here will not be there. You have to kill this mob to get access to that mob. So if you ever do this in the future and you wipe there, or you die especially, realize that you're going to spawn all the way back here. There's only 2 checkpoints. The second one is after the 3rd boss. The first one is always here, no matter where else you are in the dungeon. You die, you're going to rely on that shortcut. And if you didn't kill this mob, you have now made a massive error. I made this mistake too on stream on Wednesday. If you die up there, you're going to need a res, because you will not be able to get by this mob again unless it's a full wipe and you use Shroud again. And if you have to use Shroud again, you're done. You're not going to be able to Shroud the big pack. This is key breaking. Do not let this happen. If you wipe or you have any deaths to those trash packs that are ahead of us after the second boss, do not release. Unless it's an absolute full wipe, do not release. Because you will not be able to get by that mob. You will not be able to use the shortcut. Okay, so big tip there.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so we're going to go back to the pack. I think you did kill one of the mobs. It's not really that big of a deal. The mobs themselves, like... The individual mobs aren't anything to talk about. It's just the fact that there's a bunch of them there. You really don't want to fight them. Like, they're going to put you way over count. I mean, there's 5 mobs there. There's an emissary there a lot of the times, too, making it just the hardest packs in the game. Especially when it's a void emissary. You can't really skip that. You'd have to kill it. Kill the Beastmaster. Obviously, we're not mind controlling it. But, yeah, so if you're worried about... So there's that Deadeye shot. You see that? Watch this. Boom. Why don't you get knocked off the platform after I just told you about that? Oh, man. Anyway, so you can, as I just predicted, you can get knocked off the platform by that mechanic, so you want to make sure you don't let that happen.
I'm coming.
Yeah, we'll meet you here.
I'm coming.
Well, it's not too long of a trip, hopefully, as a monk. Okay, so anyway, yeah, we got these 5 mobs here. It looks like we killed one of the hunters or whatever. I don't know exactly what's there, but either way, one of them died by accident. Doesn't matter. 5 mobs, want to skip them. The multiple ways you can skip them. Obviously, Invispot works fine. It'll be fine. If you're gonna shroud them, I'll wait till Cop's here. But if you're gonna shroud them, there's something you got to do. You got to make sure if you don't split the middle perfectly, you're gonna aggro them. I've had this happen a lot, where we shroud and you got to distract them. I always say sap them, but you can't sap them. They're undeads. But you got to distract them. Otherwise, they're going to see you. If you're not perfect, they're going to see you and they're going to aggro. So ideally, you would distract them. But either way, Cop's there. So if you do want to fight them, which, you know, a lot of the times you're just not going to, like, depending on the key level, right? If this is aimed at new players, you're probably not skipping mobs on a 10. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not a big deal. Just kill it. It's not a big deal. So if you're going to kill it, again, you can actually see this. This Spectral Headhunter, look at the health pool on these mobs. This is not even an elite. It's got 163k health. So the pack isn't as dangerous as it looks. It's going to die pretty quick. Really, the big problem is the Witch Doctor is going to put that healing totem down, and then the Hex Priest might turn Frog Boy over here. That might cause a problem. And then the Berserker obviously is going to be a problem. But yeah, other than the tank, if the tank is 100% sturdy, like if you're just a DPS, then who cares? Just follow his lead as long as, you know, the Berserker dies quick. The rest of the pack isn't actually. But a lot of the times, again, I will just mind control, and then we'll just kind of pop everything on the other 4. But it looks really dangerous. 5 mobs in a dungeon like this looks like absolute lunacy. But again, that Headhunter mob type, I think that was probably the other mob. That's how Cop killed it so fast. It's just, it's nothing. You just kill it, it's not a big, really just a Berserker. So this is how we would do it. We'd isolate the one and then kill it afterwards. No big deal. Now again, same thing up here. You can actually, this is a really good place to CC one way or the other. Even if you're not mind controlling, you could CC. So Cop could use Paralysis. Go ahead and do that. Paralysis 1. It's an undead, so you know this is a good time for Shackle if you're a priest. This is a really good dungeon actually for a priest. There's, you know, mind controlling, or I'm sorry, there's you could actually get a little bit of value out of life grip. A little bit of value if somebody gets knocked up in the air, you could life grip them so they don't take fall damage. You could obviously, it's just a good dungeon for priests because there's a lot of things to purge, a lot of things to dispel. So yeah, really good for priests. But anyway, that's what you want to do there. Just isolate one at a time. Really don't want to fight 2 at a time if you're especially challenge to beat, because the likelihood that you're going to have more than 1 stack of the bleed is extremely high. In fact, again, on Wednesday I did this. I had 4 stacks of the bleed. That's that. Lights out. Not surviving that really under any circumstance. Maybe you're a bear or something like that with massive armor. I don't know. You might survive something like that, but realistically, it's not happening. Okay, so this is probably one of the most complicated bosses in the game. But let's talk about, instead of pulling it, let's talk about each part of it, just kind of like we did with the Waycrest boss. So I'm going to put markers down, okay? Luckily, the Axe one is out first. This is your ideal situation here, and I can explain to you why. But the Axe one is Skull, right? The Axe one. Then there's the Caster one. It's going to be green. Totems. See, very nice Zandalari Shaman totems there. And then you got the big brute one. That's the purple one. Okay, so that's where the 3 of them are going to spawn. Kula the Butcher is the first target we'll see. This is the Axe one. Now, the reason that this mob is so dangerous is because I don't know. It's like once every like 4 cycles of mechanics, she'll throw an axe at somebody's head. It's like she makes a mechanic. She makes an emote about somebody's head or something. Okay, so when that happens, that person now has an insane bleed on them. Like an insane bleed. I'm talking about a crazy, crazy bleed. Pretty easy to keep people alive if there's the 1 out. But if you get a 2nd or even a 3rd one of those, it's not good. Really, really not good. So there's a couple ways to solve it. Number 1, Bloodlust. You Bloodlust on this mob, you're going to dramatically decrease the likelihood that anybody's going to die of that mechanic. 1 goes out, it's not the end of the world. But if more than 1 ever go out, I don't think there can be more than 1 out at a time, but if a 2nd one goes out, the healer's mana is probably going to get really drained, especially if it's early. So this is the ideal situation here. You have the Butcher first. If you're really worried about it, Lust here, okay? I think, you know, it depends. The final boss can be really difficult without Lust, but I'd say probably on a fortified week, I wouldn't Lust here. The final boss is just going to be longer and more dangerous. This boss is going to die quick enough that you're not going to need to deal with the 2nd one of these mechanics. But either way, as a damage healer, you see this mob, you're popping everything. Okay, so if this mob is not first, it can be any of these 3 first, by the way, if that's not clear. It could be the purple one first, it can be the green one first, it can be the red one first, whatever, the skull. It's just random, I think, based on the week. It might be predictable, like it might cycle kind of like in Freehold. I don't really know. All I know is when you see this one first, pop all your CDs. This is the ideal situation. You get a pre-pot, maybe you're lusting, whatever, popping all CDs. It's going to die mad quick. Okay, but you're still gonna have to do one mechanic on the fight. So let's talk about that one mechanic. Basically, she's gonna throw 2 axes out, and they're gonna circle across each other. Like one's gonna go to the left, one's gonna go to the right. It's gonna make a big circle. Okay, so the way I like to do it is keep her on the edge. All right, so basically you tank her on the edge. So let's look at this, right? You tank her on the edge, and say my D&D is the radius, the circumference of her axis. Okay. Well, as you can see with D&D, most of it is off the platform. So this means there's just less likelihood that anybody is going to get hit by it, okay? A lot of people don't like that. They'd rather tank her in the middle, because then even though every axe is still on the platform, the middle is always clear. So what you do is you'll drag her to the center, she'll do the mechanic, you run her out, wait for the axe to pass, you run back in. You'll do that 5-6 times, however long it takes to kill her, and then you're done. What I do instead is on the side, you tank her. I first start her there. She throws the axe. I drag her about 15 yards away, throws the axe again, drag her another 15 yards, throws the axe again, drag her another 15 yards. And basically, I want to go this way. I want to go left here. By the time we get over here to this side, the next boss will be, this boss will be dead usually. If it's a really, really, really long encounter, like if you're doing this on a really high key or something like that, you want to go the other way. You'll start towards green, then to purple, and then basically she won't die until she gets back to where she started. So that's actually better. But if it's an easy key, if it's a low key, I like to tank her around and go around the left side, because then you have that basically only half of the room is covered in axes. But anyway,
the Ashbane Tango.
Yeah, something like that. But I'm just telling you this because you're probably never going to see anybody but me do this. I'm not really sure why, frankly. I mean, people will probably try to tell me why all day, but I don't really see why people like this center strategy so much. Because this means you have to move twice. You get the boss here, then you move out, then you have to move back in. With my strategy, you only move once. So I don't think this is better. Unless you have like 0 casters, I don't see why you would want to move twice. I really don't. The only thing I can think of is it means that all the axes are in one area kind of the whole time. I don't really see why that's an issue. There's not going to be like 60 axes. Once, you'd only ever have to deal with me. Here, let's see how it plays out. Actually, hold on. Let's talk about the other bosses first. Okay. So that's the most dangerous one. We spent the most time talking about that one. But the other 2 have a couple things that you do want to be aware of. Let's talk about the purple one. That, like, lady. Okay. It's not very complicated. All she's gonna do is she's gonna 2 mechanics. She's gonna charge, kind of wait for a few seconds, and then she's gonna charge at somebody. Okay. When she hits that person, she will kill them. She'll do like 200% of their health and damage, but it can be split. So every person she hits along the way reduces her momentum, basically makes her do less damage with the charge. That's the RP, right? So you want to have all 5 people in the line, or you want to have somebody immune it. Kind of a funny story about a time that somebody didn't immune it when they were supposed to, but we won't talk about that now. Either way, if you have a paladin, you ideally you're going to be using bop for getting this bleed when you're fighting the butcher. You want to bop that bleed off the target. That's another idea. You want to use an immunity, so if that bleed goes on a mage, paladin, they could get it off themselves. They can bop off another person, etc. But if you have this kind of affordability for immunities, you can just solo it. Or if you're a demon hunter, you can just solo it with darkness, whatever, meta, all that, no problem. It doesn't really do that much damage. It's not really worth soloing it. It's like, if you're going to solo it, you better make sure you don't need that solo potential otherwise it's just a waste of time. But anyway, then the only other mechanic is the tank mechanic. It's just, she's going to knock you back, and when she hits you, it's going to put a Sunder armor that reduces your health by 50%. You can parry it, you can dodge it. You can actually parry both elements of it. You might still get knocked back, but not get the Sunder armor, or you might not get knocked back, but get the Sunder armor. You can prevent the knockback with Death's Advance, and you, of course, can parry it. So I like to use, you want to save Dancing Rune Weapon for that. Just time it out. Like if you do the Butcher first, you'll have Dancing Rune Weapon up the second time when you do this here, blah, blah, blah. But if you have Dancing Rune Weapon, parry it. But that's it. That one's really easy. It's going to continue to happen throughout the fight, but it's really easy. Just dodge it. The green dude, the totem one, is just as simple. It's only going to have one mechanic that you really need to worry about, and that's the totems. He's going to spawn totems all around the room. There's one that is I'm not exactly sure what the name. We'll probably see them during the fight. But there's one that's high priority. It's like a fire totem, I think, and it's gonna cast an ability. If that ability completes, it's over, the wipe. So there's 4 totems. You want to kill that one first, get that one out of the way, and then the other kind of can just die at their own time. But the main thing on this guy is somebody has to interrupt his poison nova. Poison damage, if the cast gets off, it puts a big poison damage out, and it puts this giant dot on everyone. If you have a monk healer that is, you can just immediately get it off. So it's not the end of the world if a mistake like that happens. But realistically, if somebody doesn't interrupt that, you're wiping. You're not going to get away with that. So, you as a melee DPS, it's going to be pretty difficult to interact with that mechanic. A lot of people place the blame on the tank. They'll say this is a tank mechanic. You want to interrupt that. But for me, I would rather interrupt the lightning bolts he does because they do a lot of damage, and I would rather let the DPS get the easy mechanic. So as long as you have one range DPS. But anyway, let this is a long fight. So let's see this whole. Let's let this play out. We'll kind of just auto attack and see. So anyway, I kind of maybe like starter even here, as far against this thing as possible. So this first axe is well under the concern. So as you see, the axes come out. They spin in opposite directions, like I was saying, and you just kind of move her this far. This is all you need to move. You see, they're not actually going to come close enough to hit me. You move a little bit further if you have to, and that's that. And we're just going to keep doing this until she's dead, effectively. There's severing axe now on top. And obviously, you take a lot of damage. You might 0. You might actually die to it. So pretty dangerous. Got a lot of health, so we'll have to kill it. But yeah, that's that. So you just want to keep you can bop that off if you do it. Otherwise, you again must. And I'll see these on this, and this is how I like to do it. Just kind of keep her against these walls here with severing axe on top again. That's it. Down like the Titanic. I got battle red, so no big deal. Maybe we won't survive actually. But anyway, yeah, so you see that, basically that's how long you have. If the second one goes out, you're in trouble. You really got to try to bop it off. Otherwise, the healer's going to be working very, very hard. And even on a 0, pretty easy to die there. So, as you see, this is about, this is how it would have gone on a real key. It would end right there, and then there'd be plenty of room. So, again, you could interrupt the lightning bolt, but the main thing, you got to interrupt the poison nova. And then you just got to kill the totem. So the rest of the fight is easy. If you get the axe chip first and you lost, there's poison over, top gets interrupted. Very good play. That's it. Just need somebody to interrupt it. The main problem is that when the totems are up, you're not going to be able to interrupt it. Again, she's going to come and mirror her abilities every time. One that's dead, so there you go. Alright, so there's Earthen Wall, Torrent Totem, Thundering Totem, and Explosive Totem. Explosive Totem is the one we need to kill ASAP. And if you don't kill it before this explode goes off, as you see, it does a ton of fire damage. Not a big deal. And then, again, so we're over there dealing with the totem. This is the hecticness of the fight. We're over there dealing with the totem, and the boss is casting the ability. Nobody interrupts it. It's a wipe. But yeah, so you as a DPS man, you got to interrupt. You got to kill these totems. Get off the boss and kill the totems. Like, as the damage dealer, you got to switch off the boss and kill the totems. Basically, there's 4 totems. You want to have one of each person. 1 totem for each person. Kill the exploding totem first. There's the poison nova. So it can go off. No interrupts. Yeah, that's that. Probably not a big deal on 0, but either way, that's the fight. So very hectic, a lot of movement, a lot of things that are going to cause issues with all the elements and coding things. So there you go again. Tank-wise, you want to try to keep the boss on one of the. Oh my god, I freaking one-shot that totem. Anyway, you want to keep the boss on one of them so you can kind of cleave them down. Again, you can't actually AoE them, but you as a tank can kind of target one and just cleave off it. Kind of yeah, pretty straightforward. This fight gets a lot easier once you kill the axe. But as you can kind of see from our little foray here in 0, it's actually a lot more dangerous than it looks, and really just very hectic, especially if you have no range DPS. So there's the poison nova. Top's got the interrupter. And those blades, they'll keep spinning, and they will hit you and they'll put a dot on you. Let's see what dot does. Not a big deal. So here you'd use Dancing Rune Weapon. You can get actually targeted by her. Barrel through, that's the name of this game. So you see, it's going to form a line, and I want to just make sure I'm in that line, so no matter what, it's going to reduce the damage. Backhand, I parried it, or dodged it. But either way, it didn't hit me. The mechanic went off. I didn't get knocked back, and I didn't get the debuff. So that's the ideal case of the tank. This is definitely the easiest of the 3 bosses. So a lot to do about that fight. Just you really want to be aware. Definitely the hardest fight in, you know, probably in any key. Oh, I forgot about the chest. And there's a little chest here if you're doing this. Anyway, yeah, very dangerous fight, and it's very, very, very long. As you can see, even on 0, it was a freaking 3-minute kill. Well, actually, it was almost a 4-minute kill. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a pretty long fight.
Whew, that was actually really stressful.
Oh, yeah, well, wait till you do it on 10. Okay, so another thing here is if you skipped this pack, which again, very likely that you're going to do, what you might have seen there was when we walked up to this area here, it's going to start a little cutscene. That might really cause your ability to skip it again. So what you want to do is you want to run up right against this wall here. It's going to start the cutscene, and then you cancel it, and then you skip it again. So you could use an invis pot. If shrouds somehow back up, you could shroud again, or you can do a controlled wipe, right? Where even if the healer just invis pots, and then the other 4 people die to the pack, the healer can run up here, cast mass res, and hit everybody. But we are now on to the Shadow of Zul, who is arguably probably the most maybe the most frustrating addition to any dungeon that the game has had to offer. And that is because it is a massive source of magic damage, and he's got a ton of health for basically a trash pack. He doesn't give that much count. If you could skip him, you would. There is a really, really convoluted way to skip him, and I will not be covering that here because frankly I think it's an exploit. But you can, it's possible. If you really want to look it up, look it up. I'm never going to skip him. Just be aware, a lot of people might actually lust here. Like I said, on Fortified, a lot of people won't lust for the Axe Girl because they think it's not needed, which I would agree with, and then they might actually lust here. Especially if you got kind of a tank like a warrior, you're going to see the magic damage is quite a lot, and even on 0, it's being so. As Blood DK though, easy mode. Just stack up your hemostasis and AMS, you know, use AMS and Vamp Blood well, and you're not going to have any problems. Something like Brewmaster, Bear, Warrior, you're going to have some problems for sure. Okay, so let's talk about Dazar. Pretty easy encounter compared to the other 4, but very difficult numerically. Really all the dangers on the tank. It's not actually like, it's just all pure tank fight. This is probably the hardest tank fight in any 5-man. He's going to do this kind of like succession of 3 hits, and usually by the 3rd one you're going to be really low. If you're a bear, somebody with good active mitigation, bear, warrior, paladin, you just want to line up your active mitigation for when he does it. It's pretty easy to predict. Obviously you're going to see it happen. It's a little bit of a channel and you're all set. But this is actually really difficult as a Blood DK, so let's talk a little bit about it real quick. And what you want to do here effectively is you want to spend no runes on Death Strike until he does the mechanic. Full hemostasis, you should be able to get at least 3 charges of hemostasis in between each of the Death Strike, or in between each of the abilities that you're going to use the Death Strike on. And then you want to wait until the 3rd slash is about to happen. So Death Strike, the 2nd one, right before the 3rd one, so you get maximum benefit from the hemostasis and the Death Strike timing. You get a nice little padding. Your shield, your blood shield is going to be really high. So you absorb most of the 3rd one and then use another allocation of runic power on another Death Strike. And that is how you maximize your play on this fight. You can also just take Rune Tap. If you want to have Rune Tap for the entire dungeon, it trivializes the whole fight. But it seems like a pretty bad investment for one single boss. I would rather just do that. It's going to be, you're going to do very little DPS playing it this way. But yeah, just hemostasis. You know, blood boil as often as you can. Don't spend runic power on Death Strike until he does the mechanic. Then Death Strike twice during the mechanic. That's that. So really as a DPS, there's not even much to talk about. The big thing here is that you really want to kill the raptors. I don't know where this became a thing, but people just don't kill the raptors anymore, and it's really not a good idea. When you have 3 targets hitting the tank, it's probably as a DPS, it seems optimal, but this is not how you want to do the fight. The first raptor is just going to do the same thing as the other raptors in this dungeon. He's going to jump to a person and kind of claw them. Again, you could disrupt it in all the normal ways. The second one is going to be his mount. It's a lot more dangerous. It's going to fear you. You're going to fear pretty frequently, like every 5 or so seconds. So you want to get that one done mad quick. A lot of people might actually save lust for that phase so they can get it off the raptor as fast as possible and cleave off all the other stuff. Like a lot of people might not even attack the first raptor, then lust and kill all 3 targets kind of evenly. You can do that if you want. AMS will prevent the fear. Obviously, if you're a warrior, you could use the fear break on that as well. Tremor totem will work as well if you have a shaman. Make sure you're coordinating with the tremor, but that's kind of the whole fight. There's another mechanic which, if we made this last, a couple months ago, I would have tried to show you, but it is changing. Unless it was bugged when I did on the PTR, it looks like it's changing. We'll probably see it on the encounter, so let's just have a look. But yeah, this is actually a really easy fight as a damage dealer. The only other thing to be aware of is he does the scale slash mechanic. He's gonna like turn around and kind of like throw his blade almost. There it is there. See, he's gonna throw his blade at me, and it's gonna summon this little tornado. Again, it's a physical, it's actually nature, but it looks like it's physical. It is nature. Blade combo there. You see 1, 2, death strike, death strike. That's what you do if I don't powerful. Anyway, kill. The mob hunting leap again, Raban, you can grip him, stop him in all these couple ways. When you kill him, like I said, there's a couple options. You can either kill him both evenly and lust or something like that. But he can also hit you with his blade combo when he's all the way over there, by the way. So here's Tizala. This is the one that's going to do the fear. And you're going to want to try to AMS that. Just AMS right before it. As you see, cops are over there running like a little kid. I'm here AMS, strong boy DK, no big deal, you know what I mean? But yeah, either way, just kill it. It's not really that big a deal. Make sure you're dodging the tornadoes and now the big problem here is this final mechanic, and we're going to show this off. I'll talk a little bit about how it's changed on the PCR and talk about why I assume it's staying that way. But I'm going to start doing it above, below 50. This quacking leap mechanic, you just want to get this as far away from people as possible. It's very similar. A lot of mechanics like that in the game, so nothing crazy. Okay, so now, maybe it's even lower than 50. I don't really know, because I've never seen him this high after we kill the raptors, usually lower. But, yeah, okay, impaling spear. So, there's 2 patterns currently for this impaling spear. Basically, you just got to dodge them, and, you want to just predict where they are and just not be in the pattern. Basically, this little river of gold here is kind of like your get out of jail free card. If you're here, you could very easily dodge either of them. Even because it's 0, he's not doing it, but a lot of oh yeah, here we go. So you see this progression pattern. It's very likely to start right here again. So you can just, again, kind of stay on this little Z of gold here, and you'll just kind of avoid the whole mechanic. But it's changing. I'll talk a little bit about it once we kill it. But it's changing in the next expansion, and it's or not expansion, obviously, in the next patch. And the way it looked like it was on the PTR, it was just random. Like there was some markers. There was like some here. There was like one there. There's like one there. There's like over here. They're just like all over the room. Just gray circles, basically. Those grayish brown circles. Be like all over the room. So it actually makes it a lot easier to not get hit by it by accident, but it makes it impossible to always avoid it, which is what people basically do. You stand right here where the boss is and where we are currently. You literally pretty much avoid it 99% of the time. Every once in a while, it will spawn to your right and progress from skull this direction, skull to red. But yeah, 99% of the time, more like 75% of the time, you fight it right here, you're gonna dodge almost all of them. So that's the dungeon. What'd you think?
There's a lot.
Yeah, this is definitely one that very complicated dungeon. Really, probably one of the hardest dungeons they've ever had for any version of Mythic Plus, challenge mode, anything like that. And the big problem typically is that you just don't have a lot of wiggle room in it. The bosses are very long, they're arduous, they're a real trial. It's not any shorter, it's not any longer or shorter, like, whatever, which direction you're taking. The timer isn't any more lenient than any other dungeon. Not any easier in terms of, like, there's not one area that you really can take a nap on. Everybody thinks that, like, the Machimba stretch there, the second boss stretch, is the easiest part of the dungeon, maybe one of the easiest in the whole game. But I'm telling you, I've seen some pretty absurd mistakes in there. So really, I guess, we talk about what the biggest mistake that you can make in here. And I would say the most devastating mistake that you can make in this dungeon is failing at the trash after Machimba and then failing to recover from it. If you have a death or two, it's not the end of the world. But if you skipped the stuff at the start, you skip that big dude in front of the bridge there, you cannot use the ghost to get back, and you're not going to be able to skip it. I mean, somebody's going to have to invis-pot that, basically. To get by that a second time, you're in trouble. So that's probably the biggest mistake you can make. You got to remember, if you have a rogue don't ever release in this dungeon unless everybody's over. If you don't have a rogue, you didn't skip that guy. Maybe, again, to season 4, it's going to all change. It's not. This is all, again, talking about season 3, basically. But season 4, this is a pointless topic to even have because you're going to be able to skip that thing as many times as you want with those portals. So maybe I'm, going on about this for no reason. But right now, the biggest mistake people make, and it's a very easy one to make, is failing at the trash on the way to the third boss and then failing to recover from it. That is a key breaker because it is such a long recovery time in general. So I've even seen people, like, typically your lusts would be first boss, Machimba, and then either the axe boss or this boss, depending on what you're worried about, or even Zool. But I did, last week, I saw people lust on the trash after Machimba because it's that dangerous. And I'm like, you don't need it. We're good. I'm a blood DK. You know what I mean? But people fear it that much. So really, moral of the story, run with the Death Knight. Or something that could mind control or control undead in general. So actually, Monk is pretty good. You can control that mob.
No.
No, you could use sap on it or whatever.
Paralysis. Yeah.
Yeah, you could paralyze it. I just mean something that could actually CC it. Because a mage can't, a rogue can't. These things can't CC it, but you don't need to mind control it. You can just sap it, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Paralyze
No,
it.
I got you. I was just like, what is he talking about? I can't mind control undead.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
So, any questions or anything that you want to...
There's so much to this dungeon. I'm going to have to go back and watch this a few times to get my head around it. Because there's just a lot happening all the time. It's very intense.
It is. That's probably the best way I can describe it. There's no breaks in this dungeon. It's wall-to-wall danger. Like, we might look at Motherlode or Freehold in the future, and it's like, okay, just don't worry about this pack. Or, this boss is pretty easy, no big deal. But this one, it's every single time you're in combat, you're in danger. You're in serious danger. There's a lot of mechanics. And that's really the pains. We talk about dungeon design, man. They have to really figure something out for this next expansion because when you need 100% count across 17 mobs, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It means those mobs are going to be a lot more dangerous. When you have so little trash in a dungeon like this, because there's a lot of trash in Freehold, Motherlode, whatever, but you still need 100% count. That might mean you're killing like 70 mobs. In this dungeon, it might mean you're killing 20-some mobs. That's it. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of mobs to kill in this dungeon. So it means the ones you are killing have a lot of health and are a lot more dangerous than your normal mob. And this is definitely, if there was one dungeon to master, I would probably say King's Rest. I mean, Shrine and some others are really, you want to master them too. But this one, there's just so many mechanics on so much of the trash. And then you got Zool. You got the hardest trash mob in the entire game just sitting in between two bosses. It's really an unforgiving dungeon.
Yeah, I can tell that for sure. It's, there's a lot, I even got knocked off the bridge at one point in a zero.
He died. I told him he was going to do it, and he did it anyway. How about that?
Oh, man.
All right, so that's that. This one, again, hopefully everybody learned from. If you have any questions, leave them down below. This is definitely one to think more on. So anybody needs any help, let me know. Otherwise, King's Rest. Once you figure this all out, it's a pretty straightforward dungeon. You got 5 people who know what they're doing. Other than this is the other thing about this dungeon. It sucks on both tyrannical and fortified. There's no break week on this dungeon. There's really not an easy week for King's Rest. It's not as hard as it used to be, especially if you got a Blood DK or a Death Knight in general. But there's no break weeks. There's never going to be that week. Oh, we got King's Rest? Can't wait. Never going to happen. So hopefully you guys learned. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.